The gymnasium echoed with thunderous applause as Marcus Thompson dribbled the basketball, his movements a fluid dance of athletic precision. Scouts from top universities watched intently, clipboards in hand, their eyes tracking every calculated move. This was more than just a championship game. It was Marcus's ticket to a future beyond the small, economically struggling town of Millbrook. At 19, Marcus represented hope, not just for himself, but for his entire community. The son of a factory worker and a part-time nurse, he'd maintained a near-perfect 3.9 GPA while leading his high school basketball team to an unprecedented undefeated season. His mother, Sarah, sat in the bleachers, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles turned white, silently praying for her son's moment of triumph. The game was minutes from ending. Marcus had already scored 32 points, with college scouts from Duke, UCLA, and Stanford whispering excitedly about his potential. Then everything changed. During a routine timeout, two local police officers entered the gymnasium. Their presence was unusual, their expressions deliberately stern. Marcus noticed them first, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. Something was wrong. Marcus Thompson, the older officer called, his voice cutting through the celebratory noise. The gymnasium fell silent. Teammates looked confused. Coaches stopped mid-gesture. Marcus's mother stood up, her instincts screaming danger. "You're under arrest for the armed robbery of Millbrook Central Bank on March 15th, the officer declared, pulling out handcuffs. The accusation was absurd. Marcus had been in a college preparation class during the exact time of the robbery, a fact confirmed by multiple witnesses and school records, but logic seemed irrelevant in that moment. Judge Harold Reinhardt watched from the sidelines, a thin smile barely concealing his satisfaction. A prominent figure in Millbrook's judicial system, Reinhardt was known for his conservative views and thinly veiled racial prejudices. This moment was more than an arrest, it was a calculated move. The evidence against Marcus was circumstantial at best. A blurry surveillance video showed a tall black male near the bank, a partially matched fingerprint, a witness description that could have fit dozens of young black men in the county. But Reinhardt was determined to make an example. As Marcus was handcuffed, his basketball rolled forgotten across the polished floor. His scholarship offers would be rescinded, his dreams would be crushed, and no one seemed interested in the truth. The trial was a mockery of justice. Reinhardt systematically dismissed character witnesses. He allowed questionable forensic evidence. He instructed the jury to view Marcus not as a promising student-athlete, but as a potential threat to community safety. The defendant represents a pattern of urban youth bringing crime into our peaceful community, Reinhardt said during sentencing, his words dripping with coded racism. 12 hours after being named championship game MVP, Marcus found himself sentenced to 15 years in state prison. His mother collapsed in the courtroom, her screams of injustice echoing off the marble walls. The prosecution's case was built on prejudice, not proof. Marcus at Alave was strong, his record impeccable. But in Judge Reinhardt's courtroom, those facts meant nothing. As Marcus was led away, handcuffed and shell-shocked, he locked eyes with his mother. In that moment, a silent promise passed between them. This injustice would not be the end of his story. Little did anyone know, this wrongful conviction would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately expose a system rotting from within and create an unlikely alliance that would change everything. The maximum security prison was a world of concrete and steel, designed to break spirits. But Marcus Thompson refused to be broken. His first week was a survival test. Older inmates sized him up, a college-bound athlete now stripped of everything. Prison was a brutal ecosystem of power, reputation, and survival. Marcus quickly realized his intelligence would be his greatest weapon. During mandatory work assignment, Marcus was placed in the prison library, a decision that would change everything. The library was more than just shelves of books. It was a sanctuary of knowledge and hidden opportunities. The elderly librarian, Robert Jenkins, was a former civil rights attorney who had seen the worst of the judicial system. Knowledge is the only key that can unlock these walls, Jenkins told Marcus during their first conversation. Not just these physical walls, but the invisible ones built by ignorance and prejudice. Marcus began studying voraciously. He devoured legal texts, learning about constitutional law, criminal justice reform, and legal precedents. He discovered that many inmates were victims of systemic injustice, particularly black men who had been railroaded by a prejudiced system. His cellmate, Carlos Rodriguez, was serving time for a drug offense that seemed suspiciously manufactured. Together, they began documenting inconsistencies in their cases, creating a makeshift legal research network within the prison. Marcus learned multiple languages: Spanish from Carlos, French from a Haitian immigrant serving time for immigration violations, and began studying legal terminology in Latin. Each language became another tool, another way to understand the complex systems that had imprisoned him. But prison was more than just an intellectual challenge. It was a daily battle for physical and mental survival. Marcus developed a reputation as someone who could be trusted, who could help other inmates navigate the complex prison hierarchy. He started a prison study group, initially meeting in secret. Inmates would trade protection for educational opportunities. Marcus taught mathematics, helped inmates prepare for GED exams, and became a beacon of hope in a place designed to extinguish hope. The prison administration was initially suspicious. A well-educated, articulate inmate was often seen as a potential troublemaker, but Marcus was strategic. He followed every rule, maintained perfect behavior, and slowly earned grudging respect from guards and inmates alike. His family's visits became lifelines. His mother would bring carefully coded letters, updates about his ongoing legal appeal, and books. His younger sister, Jasmine, was becoming a prominent civil rights activist, using his story to challenge systemic racism. Marcus discovered that his imprisonment was part of a larger pattern. He began collecting documentation, interviewing fellow inmates, building a comprehensive database of potential judicial misconduct. The prison library became his war room, each book and document a potential weapon against injustice. Robert Jenkins became a mentor and confidant. He helped Marcus understand the nuanced legal strategies that could potentially overturn his conviction. They would spend hours discussing landmark civil rights cases, analyzing legal precedents, and planning Marcus' eventual defense. They might have taken your physical freedom, Jenkins would say, but they can never imprison your mind. By his third year in prison, Marcus had become a legend. Inmates sought his advice, guards respected his discipline, and he had created an underground network of education and support. He wasn't just surviving prison, he was transforming it. His daily routine was meticulously planned: morning workouts to maintain physical strength, hours of legal study, language practice, mentoring other inmates, writing detailed accounts of his experiences. Each day was a deliberate act of resistance. Marcus knew his true trial was not in the prison, but in the system that put him there, and he was preparing for that battle with every breath, every book, every connection he made. Little did he know the wheels of justice were slowly turning, and his greatest ally was about to emerge from the most unexpected place. The Thompson household had always been a sanctuary of resilience, but Marcus' imprisonment transformed it into a war room of resistance. Sarah Thompson, once a soft-spoken nurse, became a force of nature. Her job at the local community hospital became secondary to her mission of freeing her son. Every paycheck was strategically divided, a portion for legal fees, another for Marcus's prison commissary, and the rest for her daughter Jasmine's activism work. The most painful sacrifice came one cold November morning. Sarah walked to her living room, her fingers tracing the beautiful grand piano she played since childhood. It was more than an instrument. It was her connection to joy, to memories of family gatherings and church performances. But joy had become a luxury they could no longer afford. "We'll get Marcus home," she told Jasmine, her voice breaking as she placed an advertisement to sell the piano. "This instrument has given us hope for years. Now it'll give Marcus his freedom." Jasmine Thompson was transforming her own pain into powerful activism. At 22, she was becoming a prominent voice in the Black Lives Matter movement, using her brother's story as a catalyst for broader change. Her social media presence was strategic and powerful, each post carefully crafted to expose the systemic racism that had stolen her brother's future. She began documenting every detail of Marcus's case. Late nights were spent organizing evidence, connecting with civil rights lawyers, and building a digital archive of injustice. Her university research focused on judicial bias, turning academic study into personal mission. Their father, Robert Thompson, responded differently to the crisis. A factory worker worn down by years of economic struggle, he internalized the pain silently. His evenings were spent writing letters to politicians, legal organizations, and anyone who might help. Each rejection was another wound, but he never stopped fighting. The community's response was mixed. Some local Black families rallied around the Thompsons, providing emotional and financial support. Others were afraid. Speaking out could make them targets, but fear was not an option for this family. Jasmine's breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a university conference on criminal justice reform, she met a young investigative journalist named Alex Rodriguez. Intrigued by Marcus's case, Rodriguez began digging deeper, uncovering inconsistencies in the original prosecution. "Your brother's case has more holes than Swiss cheese," Rodriguez told Jasmine during one late-night strategy session. "The evidence doesn't just suggest innocence, it screams it." Sarah started a support group for families of wrongfully convicted individuals. What began in their small living room with 5 people soon grew to a network of 50 families across 3 states. They shared legal resources, emotional support, and strategic planning. The financial strain was constant. Legal fees mounted. Marcus's appeal required expert witnesses, forensic re-examination, and extensive research. The family's savings dwindled, but their determination never wavered. Jasmine's activism began attracting national attention. Her viral videos about Marcus's case reached millions. She transformed personal tragedy into a powerful narrative about systemic racism, turning their family's pain into a movement. "This isn't just about my brother," she would say in her powerful speeches. "This is about every Black person who has been silenced by a system designed to suppress our voices." The Thompson family's fight was more than a legal battle. It was a declaration of hope, a refusal to be broken by a system designed to crush their spirit. Their most powerful weapon was unity. Every phone call to Marcus, every legal document prepared, every speech delivered was a collective act of resistance. They were fighting not just for Marcus's freedom, but for a fundamental reimagining of justice. Little did they know their most unexpected ally was about to emerge, someone who would shake the very foundations of the system that imprisoned Marcus. Would you like me to continue with the next part or refine any aspect of this section? Emma Reinhardt's life was a carefully constructed facade of legal excellence and familial expectation. As the daughter of Judge Harold Reinhardt, she was groomed from childhood to be the perfect embodiment of legal prestige. Harvard Law School, top internships, a promising career at a prestigious law firm. She was living the dream her father had meticulously planned. But beneath the polished surface, a storm was brewing. The turning point came during a routine research project for her civil rights law seminar. Emma was digging through historical judicial records, a task she'd done countless times before. But this time, something caught her eye, a pattern of suspicious case distributions in her father's judicial history. At first, it was subtle. Disproportionate sentencing for Black defendants, consistently harsher punishments for minor offenses, dismissed alivis. Each document was a breadcrumb leading to a horrifying conclusion. Marcus Thompson's case stood out like a siren. The evidence, or lack thereof, was stunning. Emma's legal training kicked in. She began a meticulous investigation, her hands trembling as she compiled document after document. Her office became a war room. Color-coded charts lined the walls. Digital folders filled with evidence. Each night, she worked later, her perfectly manicured facade cracking under the weight of her discovery. The family dinner that changed everything happened on a crisp autumn evening. Her father, Judge Reinhardt, sat at the head of the table, discussing a recent court case with his typical authoritative tone. "Some people just don't understand the importance of maintaining order," he said, cutting into his steak. Emma's control snapped. "Like Marcus Thompson?" she asked, her voice calm but loaded with potential energy. The silence that followed was deafening. Her mother's hand froze mid-motion. Her father's knife clattered against the plate. "What do you know about Thompson?" Reinhardt asked, his voice a dangerous whisper. Emma spread the documents across the pristine white tablecloth. Case files, witness statements, forensic reports, a mosaic of judicial corruption. Each paper was a weapon, each fact a direct challenge to her father's decades of unchecked power. "I know he was innocent," Emma declared. "I know you deliberately suppressed evidence. I know you destroyed a young man's life." The confrontation was inevitable. Her father's reputation, their family's legacy. Everything was at stake. But Emma had crossed a line from which there was no return. Her law firm colleagues warned her. "You're destroying your career," they said. "Your family connections are everything in this field." But Emma had discovered something more important than career advancement: the truth. She began reaching out to Marcus's family, initially anonymously. Jasmine Thompson was cautious but intrigued. Their first meeting was a carefully orchestrated dance of mutual suspicion and potential alliance. "I need to make this right," Emma told Jasmine during their second meeting in a nondescript coffee shop. "But I need your help." The media became interested. A judge's daughter turning against her own father. It was a story too compelling to ignore. Emma knew the risks. She was dismantling not just her father's reputation, but the entire system of judicial racism he represented. Her younger brother called her a traitor. Her mother begged her to stop. But Emma had found her true calling. Using the very legal system her father had manipulated as a tool for justice. Marcus Thompson's case was becoming more than a legal battle. It was a referendum on systemic racism, family loyalty, and the true meaning of justice. And Emma Reinhardt was about to become its most unexpected champion. Would you like me to continue with the next part or refine any aspect of this section? The meeting between Emma Reinhardt and Marcus Thompson was choreographed like a delicate dance of potential betrayal and hope. They chose a neutral location, a small, secluded cafe in a neighboring county, far from the prying eyes of Millbrook's tight-knit community. Marcus arrived first, his years in prison having transformed his once athletic frame into a lean, hyper-aware presence. Every movement was calculated, every gesture measured. He wore a simple blue button-down shirt, carefully ironed, a small act of defiance against the years of institutional uniformity. Emma entered precisely at 2:00 p.m., her designer suit a stark contrast to the modest cafe setting. She carried a leather briefcase that seemed to weigh more than just documents. It carried the potential to unravel her entire family's legacy. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice professional but laden with underlying emotion. "Call me Marcus," he responded, his eyes studying her with the intensity of someone who had learned to read people during long prison nights. What unfolded was not just a conversation, but a strategic unveiling of systematic corruption. Emma spread out documents, some from her father's private files, others from court archives that had mysteriously never made it into official records. The evidence was damning. Marcus learned that his conviction was part of a broader pattern. Judge Reinhardt had systematically targeted black defendants, manipulating evidence in at least 37 separate cases over 2 decades. Each file was a testament to calculated racial bias, carefully disguised as judicial procedure. "My father didn't just target you," Emma revealed, her hands slightly trembling. "You were part of a system he helped create, a machine that turned black bodies into prison statistics." The most explosive revelation came through a set of internal memos. Judge Reinhardt had a network of connections, local law enforcement, prosecutors, even prison administrators who benefited from his corrupt system. Marcus's case was not an exception, but a calculated strategy. For Marcus, this was more than vindication. It was a complete reconstruction of his understanding of his own imprisonment. "Why are you doing this?" he asked Emma, the question hanging between them like a fragile thread. Her response was brutally honest. "Because silence makes me complicit." They began planning their next moves. Emma would become the key witness, her insider knowledge providing unprecedented insight into the judicial corruption. Marcus would be the face of the movement, transforming his personal tragedy into a broader challenge of systemic racism. Their alliance was strategic but deeply personal. Two individuals from opposite sides of a profound social divide, united by a commitment to truth. The media began catching wind of their collaboration. Social media exploded with speculation. Was this a genuine pursuit of justice or an elaborate public relations strategy? Jasmine Thompson, Marcus's activist sister, became their primary communication bridge. Her extensive network of civil rights contacts would be crucial in amplifying their message. But danger lurked. Judge Reinhardt was not a man who would go down without a fight. He began mobilizing his remaining connections, attempting to discredit Emma and suppress the emerging narrative. Anonymous threats started arriving. Emma's law firm began distancing itself. Her family essentially disowned her, with her brother publicly condemning her actions as a betrayal of family honor. Marcus recognized the pattern of intimidation. He had survived similar tactics in prison. Now they would face this together. "They want us to be afraid," Marcus told Emma during one of their strategy sessions. "But fear is the weapon of the weak. We have something more powerful, the truth." Their first joint press conference would become a moment that would change everything. A declaration of war against a system designed to suppress and oppress. The real battle was just beginning. The press conference was strategically planned at the steps of the Millbrook County Courthouse, the very institution that had once condemned Marcus Thompson. Cameras from national networks lined up, sensing a story that would capture the nation's attention. Jasmine Thompson handled the media strategy with surgical precision. She understood the power of narrative, the importance of controlling the message. Each detail was meticulously choreographed, from Emma and Marcus's positioning to the carefully prepared statements. Alex Rodriguez, the investigative journalist who had initially helped Jasmine, had been working overtime. His documentary team had been collecting evidence for months, creating a comprehensive narrative that would accompany their press conference. As Marcus stepped to the podium, the crowd fell silent. He was no longer the scared teenager from years ago, but a refined, articulate advocate for justice. Emma stood beside him, a visual representation of the alliance between insider knowledge and lived experience. "Today, we're not just challenging one case," Marcus began, his voice steady and powerful. "We're exposing a system designed to criminalize Black bodies, to turn justice into a weapon of oppression." The revelations were explosive. Emma presented documented evidence of systematic judicial misconduct spanning 2 decades. Phone records, internal memos, suppressed evidence. Each document was a hammer blow to her father's reputation. Netflix immediately saw the potential. Within 48 hours, they greenlit a documentary series. Broken Justice would become a landmark exploration of systemic racism in the American judicial system. Social media erupted. #JusticeForMarcus became a global trending topic. Celebrities, legal experts, and civil rights activists began amplifying their message. What had started as a personal story became a national movement. Judge Reinhardt's attempts to counter the narrative fell flat. His carefully constructed reputation began to crumble. Former colleagues started distancing themselves. Legal associations began internal investigations. The most powerful moment came unexpectedly. During a live interview, Marcus spoke directly to young Black men who had been similarly impacted by the system. "Your imprisonment is not your identity," he said. "Your potential is not defined by a system designed to break you." The documentary team captured everything. They followed Marcus's journey from prison to advocacy, documenting his transformation. Emma's role as the insider whistleblower added a layer of complexity that fascinated viewers. Universities began requesting speaking engagements. Marcus and Emma found themselves addressing law schools, civil rights conferences, and national media platforms. Their message was consistent: systemic change requires both external pressure and internal accountability. The legal community was divided. Some lawyers praised their courage, while others saw it as an unprecedented attack on judicial integrity. Senate hearings were called. Internal investigations were launched. Jasmine's activist network turned the momentum into tangible action. They organized protests, created legal defense funds, and began pushing for legislative reforms. Each event was live-streamed, each moment carefully documented. The financial impact was significant. Crowdfunding campaigns raised millions for legal defense and advocacy. Marcus's story became a rallying cry for judicial reform. Judge Reinhardt watched from the sidelines, his power rapidly diminishing. Former allies abandoned him, his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale of judicial corruption. The most unexpected outcome was the personal transformation. Emma, once a corporate lawyer focused on personal success, became a leading civil rights attorney. Marcus transformed from a victim to a national advocate. Their alliance represented something larger than a single case. It was a blueprint for challenging systemic racism, a model of how insider knowledge and lived experience could create meaningful change. As the documentary's trailer was released, Marcus looked at Emma and smiled. "This is just the beginning," he said. The nation was watching, and nothing would be the same again. The momentum of Marcus and Emma's crusade transformed from a legal battle to a full-scale social movement. Their organization, Truth and Justice Coalition, became a powerful force for systemic change, targeting not just individual cases, but the fundamental structures of racial inequality in the judicial system. Marcus's first major legislative victory came unexpectedly. A comprehensive criminal justice reform bill, partially drafted using evidence from his case, passed through the state legislature. It included mandatory transparency in judicial proceedings, independent review boards for potential racial bias, and increased protections for defendants. Emma leveraged her legal expertise to create a groundbreaking legal defense network. They developed an innovative system that used advanced data analysis to identify potential judicial misconduct. Machine learning algorithms combed through decades of court records, flagging patterns of systemic bias. Their work attracted national attention. Prominent civil rights attorneys, former judges, and legal scholars began collaborating. What had started as a personal quest became a comprehensive movement for judicial reform. The speaking circuit became their primary platform. Marcus's talks were particularly powerful. He didn't just share his story. He provided a comprehensive analysis of systemic racism in the judicial system. Universities, law schools, and national conferences competed to host him. Imprisonment is a system, not an incident, Marcus would tell audiences. Each case is a thread in a larger tapestry of oppression. Jasmine's media strategy continued to be crucial. She transformed their narrative into a multi-platform movement: podcasts, documentaries, social media campaigns. Each medium became a tool for education and activism. The financial impact was significant. Their organization began providing legal support for other wrongfully convicted individuals. They created a comprehensive database of potentially unjust convictions, working with innocence projects across the country. Emma's transformation was equally profound. She left her corporate law firm, dedicating herself entirely to civil rights litigation. Her insider knowledge of judicial systems became a powerful weapon against institutional racism. Their personal relationship evolved beyond a professional alliance. They became close friends, united by a shared commitment to justice. Marcus became a mentor to young lawyers interested in civil rights, while Emma developed innovative legal strategies for challenging systemic bias. The most significant breakthrough came through an unexpected channel. They began working with technology companies to develop AI-driven tools for identifying potential judicial misconduct. Their algorithm could analyze judicial decisions, identifying patterns of racial bias with unprecedented accuracy. Political impact followed. Marcus was invited to testify before congressional committees on criminal justice reform. His testimony, backed by comprehensive data and personal experience, became a turning point in national discussions about systemic racism. Their work wasn't without challenges. Continued threats, attempts to discredit their research, and personal attacks were constant, but they had built a support network that was both resilient and innovative. The financial model of their organization was unique. They created a hybrid approach, part legal defense fund, part educational institution, part technological innovation hub. Grants, donations, and strategic partnerships provided sustainable funding. Judge Reinhardt, now completely marginalized, watched as his daughter became a national hero. His attempts to counter their narrative fell flat. The very system he had manipulated was now being dismantled by his own daughter. The most powerful moment came during a national conference on judicial reform. Marcus and Emma shared the stage, their presentation a masterclass in systemic analysis and personal resilience. Justice is not just about individual cases, Marcus told the packed auditorium. It's about reimagining a system that has been fundamentally broken. Emma added, her voice equally powerful, we're not just fighting against something. We're fighting for something, a truly equitable system of justice. Their story had become more than a personal journey. It was a blueprint for social transformation. Would you like me to continue with the next part or refine any aspect of this section? 5 years after their initial alliance, Marcus Thompson stood on the TED Talk stage, a global symbol of resilience and transformation. The red circle beneath his feet seemed to pulse with the weight of his journey. Redemption, he began, is not a destination. It's a continuous process of healing, understanding, and rebuilding. The audience was a mosaic of activists, legal professionals, students, and survivors. His story had transcended individual experience, becoming a powerful narrative of systemic change. Judge Harold Reinhardt watched the broadcast from his modest apartment, a far cry from his previous life of judicial privilege. Each word Marcus spoke was another nail in the coffin of his once powerful legacy. The Thompson family's transformation was complete. Sarah, Marcus's mother, now ran a national support network for families of wrongfully convicted individuals. Jasmine had become a prominent civil rights leader, her activism now supported by institutional power rather than operating from the margins. Emma Reinhardt's law firm had become a pioneering institution for judicial reform. They had successfully overturned 47 wrongful convictions, with Marcus serving as their primary strategic advisor. Their approach was holistic, not just legal intervention, but comprehensive support for exonerated individuals. Their organization developed groundbreaking programs: comprehensive reintegration support for exonerated individuals, legal education for communities most impacted by judicial bias, technology-driven bias detection in judicial systems, mental health support for families affected by wrongful convictions. The financial impact was substantial. Major tech companies and philanthropic organizations provided funding, recognizing the systemic importance of their work. Marcus's personal life had also found healing. He married Sophia, a civil rights attorney he met during his advocacy work. They adopted 2 children, committed to creating a family defined by love, education, and social justice. The documentary Broken Justice had won multiple awards, becoming a catalyst for national conversations about systemic racism. Netflix followed up with a limited series that explored the deeper complexities of judicial corruption. Their most significant legislative victory came through the Thompson-Reinhardt Judicial Transparency Act, a comprehensive reform bill that mandated independent review of potential racial bias in court systems nationwide. Judge Reinhardt's final years were a study in personal reckoning. Stripped of his judicial title, Marginalized by the legal community, he watched as his daughter became the antithesis of everything he had represented. During one of their rare conversations, Emma confronted her father with a mixture of compassion and resolve. "This isn't about revenge," she told him. "This is about creating the justice you failed to deliver." The national conversation had shifted. Conversations about systemic racism were no longer marginal discussions, but mainstream dialogues. Marcus and Emma had become architects of this transformation. Their TED talk went viral, viewed by over 50 million people globally. International human rights organizations used their model to challenge judicial systems worldwide. The most profound impact was personal, for every individual who saw their story as a testament to human resilience. "We are not defined by our worst moments," Marcus would often say. "We are defined by how we transform those moments into opportunities for change." As the TED talk concluded, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Marcus looked at Emma, seated in the front row. Their journey had been impossible, improbable, and ultimately transformative. The story was never just about one case, one family, or one system. It was about the fundamental human capacity to challenge injustice, to choose understanding over anger, and to believe in the possibility of genuine change. Their battle was far from over, but for the first time, hope felt tangible. Would you like me to elaborate on any aspect of this final part?